The morning sun painted soft light across the quiet suburban street as Officer Sarah Monroe, 36 years old, and in her 15th year on the force, pulled up to 412 Maple Drive. To her, it was supposed to be nothing more than a welfare check. She had answered dozens of them before calls from worried neighbors about noises, arguments, or strange silences. Usually they turned out to be false alarms. But this morning would be different. Beside her sat Ranger, her 7-year-old German Shepherd partner. His sharp brown eyes swept over every corner of the neighborhood with a stillness that unsettled Sarah more than she wanted to admit. Ranger was no ordinary dog. For 6 years, he had worked by her side, tracking missing persons, sniffing out drugs, even pulling survivors from wreckage. Calm, obedient, precise, that was Ranger. But today his ears were pinned back, his body taut, and a low growl hummed deep in his chest. Sarah frowned. "Easy, boy. We haven't even knocked yet." The call had come just after briefing. Margaret Henderson, a 68-year-old neighbor, had insisted something strange was happening at the Bennett home. "I've lived next to them 3 years," Margaret had said. "I've never heard anything like it, crying for hours, then suddenly nothing at all. It doesn't feel right." Sarah respected her instincts. Margaret wasn't the type to call without reason. She mounted the steps of 412 Ranger, pacing tight circles at her side. Before she could knock the door open, a young woman stood there, baby in arms. Laura Bennett, 26. Her blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. The infant was swaddled in a yellow blanket, no more than 6 months old. "Oh, hello, Officer," Laura stammered. "Is everything all right?" Sarah introduced herself gently, already noting the tremble in Laura's voice. But before she could say more, Ranger lunged forward, barking with sudden ferocity, the leash straining in Sarah's hands. "Ranger down," she barked. He didn't listen. His teeth-bared hackles raised every muscle, quivering with urgency. Laura shrieked, clutching the baby tighter. "What's wrong with your dog?" "I haven't done anything," Sarah's pulse spiked. In 6 years, Ranger had never acted like this, not toward a civilian, never toward a woman holding a child. It went against everything in his training, everything in his nature. And then Sarah noticed something. The baby wasn't moving. Not a whimper, not a cry, not even the startled twitch most infants would give at the sound of barking. Her tiny face remained perfectly still against her mother's shoulder. Sarah's throat tightened. "Ma'am," she said cautiously, "I may need to bring Ranger back to the car. But first, could I ask you a few questions?" Laura's grip on the child tightened. "She's fine. She's always been quiet." But Ranger wouldn't stop. Even as Sarah tried to tug him back, he strained against the leash, whining, pacing, his distress escalating by the second. Sarah had seen this behavior before in training drills, when Ranger locked onto a search and rescue scent. But this was different, sharper, desperate. "Ma'am," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm, "my partner has been trained to detect danger, including situations where someone might be at risk. His behavior tells me something isn't right. Please, let me check your baby." The color drained from Laura's face. "She's just sleeping," she cried. "Why won't you believe me?" Ranger let out a sound Sarah had rarely heard from him, a mournful, keening whine. Not aggression, not warning, something that sounded heartbreakingly close to grief. Sarah stepped closer, hands steady, despite her racing heart. "Please," she whispered. For a long, agonizing moment, Laura stood frozen. Then, with trembling arms, she loosened her hold and allowed Sarah to place a hand on the infant's forehead. It was cold, too cold. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She checked again, pressing gently against the tiny chest. No rise, no fall. Her heart sank. "Ma'am," she said softly, "when was the last time Emma moved or made a sound?" At the mention of her daughter's name, Laura's fragile composure shattered. She collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing so violently the baby nearly slipped from her grasp. Sarah caught the tiny bundle just in time, holding it with infinite care. "I couldn't let her go," Laura wept. "She's my everything. I thought if I held her long enough, loved her hard enough, maybe she'd come back to me." Sarah's chest ached with sorrow. Sudden infant death syndrome. She had seen it once before years ago, but it never got easier. Yet amid the grief, a realization struck her. Ranger hadn't been lashing out at Laura. He had been sounding the only alarm he knew how, forcing Sarah to see what her human eyes hadn't yet grasped. The next hour blurred in a whirlwind. Paramedics arrived, though their gentle faces confirmed what Sarah already knew. Grief counselors came. Family members rushed in. Laura was led away, shaking and broken. And through it all, Ranger stayed at Sarah's side, no longer growling, no longer tense, just still protective, as though he understood that his job was done. That night, Sarah sat in her cruiser long after her shift had ended. She stroked Ranger's fur, staring at the empty streetlights flickering overhead. "You saved her," she whispered. "Not Emma, but Laura. You knew she was drowning in grief, and you wouldn't let me ignore it." Ranger laid his head on her lap, eyes soft, tail thumping once. 3 months passed. Sarah returned home one evening to find a letter in her mailbox. The handwriting was shaky, but careful. "Officer Monroe, I don't know how to thank you or Ranger. That day I thought my world had ended. In a way it had, but you didn't let me disappear into my sadness. Because of you, I started grief counseling. Slowly, I'm learning to live again. And I wanted you to know something. I adopted a rescue dog. Her name is Hope. She doesn't replace Emma, of course, but she gives me a reason to get out of bed, to walk, to breathe. Ranger saved my life that day, and I will never forget it." Tears blurred Sarah's vision. She folded the letter gently and slipped it into her jacket pocket. She looked at Ranger, who was sprawled across the living room rug paws, twitching in sleep. He was dreaming, she thought. Maybe running through fields, maybe chasing shadows only he could see. "Good job, partner," she whispered. His ears twitched as though he'd heard her. One of the most powerful lessons from this story is the importance of trusting intuition and recognizing silent cries for help. Ranger, the German Shepherd, reminded us that signals of danger or pain are not always obvious. Sometimes they are quiet, hidden, or disguised as something ordinary. In life, people around us may carry grief, loneliness, or struggles they cannot voice, much like Laura carrying her baby in denial. If we only look at the surface, we might miss their pain. The story also teaches us about the healing power of companionship, whether through people or animals. Acts of empathy, listening, being present, or offering support can literally save a life. Applying this in our own lives means slowing down, paying attention, and showing compassion even when we don't fully understand the situation. Sometimes, the greatest help comes not from having all the answers, but simply by refusing to ignore when something feels wrong.